Hello and welcome to the CineManiax podcast. I'm your host, Chris Reed, editor of Film Festival Today, lead film critic at Hammer to Nail, and chair of the Department of Film and Moving Image at Stevenson University. On today's show, we'll talk about the 2024 Middleburg Film Festival, which ran October 17th to the 20th in Middleburg, Virginia, and during which many of this year's potential award winners screened. Joining me on the show is Cortland Jacoby, a critic and writer based in the DC area. Her work can be found at Punch Drunk Critics, Showbiz Cheat Sheet, Ranker, and Game Rant. While she writes a lot of reviews, she likes to conduct interviews and attend film festivals. She is a member of the Washington, D.C. Area Film Critics Association, as am I, and the Alliance of Women Film Journalists. It's great to have you on the show, Cortland. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I'm excited.
So we both attended the recent Middleburg Film Festival in Middleburg, Virginia, not too far from DC. It happens every year. They bring an amazing array of films and filmmakers to the festival, which is why I like to go there. What were your top 3 films this time, Cortland?
Well, I want to start off, on a very easy note with a film called Night Bitch. It's a film by Marielle Heller, who did Diary of a Teenage Girl. She also did A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which was about Mr. Rogers, which was very cool a couple years ago. This is not like that movie at all. It stars Amy Adams as a mom whose toddler is in full-on toddler mode and raising havoc, and she is just at her wit's end, and she doesn't have a lot of friends in her neighborhood. And so instead of trying to figure that out, she starts to believe that she is becoming a dog. And we sort of see this transformation as she goes from mom to dog and maybe back again a couple of times. It's really, really fun. It's playful. Amy Adams' performance is completely visceral and raw, and you root for her the entire time, especially when she's fighting with her husband, played by Scoop McNairy. And you have Amy Adams singing Weird Al Yankovic's Dare to Be Stupid in a car. There's really nothing else that you need in a movie. And then secondly, I would recommend Gia Coppola's next feature, The Last Showgirl, which stars Pamela Anderson, Dave Bautista, and Jamie Lee Curtis, fully Jamie Lee Curtising. We haven't seen Pamela Anderson in a very long time, and if you know anything about her, of course, she hasn't been taken very seriously as an actress. This is her role. She plays a showgirl in a Las Vegas nightclub and has been in that role for close to 40 years. She's surrounded by young showgirls played by Kieran Shipka and Brenda Song, and unfortunately is told they have 2 weeks until the show shuts down. And so we kind of follow her through this identity crisis as she's trying to reconnect with her daughter, as she's trying to figure out how she's going to have any kind of stability after she leaves. And Gia Coppola tries to really ask this question: what do we do when the dream that we followed for and given up everything for doesn't love us back and ends? And it's this very, very beautiful, poignant story that I think is told beautifully by Pamela Anderson, and it's the performance of her career. And it's really wonderful to see her do something different and surprise people. And so this is probably one of my most surprising films of the year, and I hope that more people get to see it because it's really, really beautiful. And then I also recommend this film called Small Things Like These, that is based on the book by the same name by Claire Keegan and is directed by Tim Millance, known for his work on Peaky Blinders. And of course, this film is the first big film for Cillian Murphy after he won his Oscar last year for Oppenheimer. He plays a man called Bill Furlong, who is a co-worker in Ireland, and one day notices that some of the activities at a girls' school by his house are not so above board, and there might be some abuse happening there. And so we kind of follow his journey on whether or not he will do the right thing. He is a dad of 5 girls and he has a wife. And so in this very small community, do you go against the Catholic Church, or do you go with your conscience? And so that's kind of the moral dilemma at the beginning of this film. It sounds very depressing. There are moments of levity. There are moments of light. And I think if Night Bitch is kind of the angry film that we need right now, Small Things Like These is the time. And the film really about doing the right thing, even when it's hard.
Thank you so much for sharing your top 3, Cortland. I have seen all of them, and although we only overlap on one in my list, I really, really liked Small Things Like These. As you know, I was fortunate enough to moderate the Q&A with director Tim Mullins at Middleburg Film Festival, and I had the honor to speak to him directly in that way. I know you interviewed him after the screening as well. I love Claire Keegan. She wrote Foster, which was turned into The Quiet Girl a few years ago. I think the film is very powerful. However, there are some films that blew me away even more, and here is my list. I'll start with the area of overlap, and that is Night Bitch, which I also really, really loved. It's an adaptation of Rachel Yoder's eponymous novel from 2021. As you mentioned, well, you basically gave all the details, so I can just piggyback on what you said. In addition to the aspects of the film that you highlighted, I won't just repeat, I really like this group of 3 women that she meets at the library, where the guy who's playing music for the kids is actually the director's brother, Marilyn Heller's brother, who also scored the film. I love the scenes there. And those women, Zoe Chow, Mary Holland, and Archana Rajan, are really fun. They're really funny, as is much of the movie. There is one scene involving a cat, which is very difficult to watch. My understanding is that it is less challenging to experience in the movie than in the book. But I found this film, for all the reasons that you already so brilliantly articulated, to be a must-see for the end of the year. And I love Amy Adams, and I love her in this film. I also like Scoot McNairy as the somewhat hapless husband who doesn't quite get what's going on in his wife's head. Then there was a stop-motion film from Australia called Memoir of a Snail that I just found so touching. Much of it is very twisted and depressing, but it has a beautiful ending. And it's a sort of a coming-of-age story about 2 siblings who are separated when both their parents die, leaving them orphaned. And one is sent to one end of Australia and the other to another end, and the families that raise them are quite different. And yet, despite all the challenges that they face, they end up having a somewhat happy ending. And there's a lovely older character in the movie named Pinky, who's this wonderful inspiration showing that the wonders of being a free spirit that I really enjoyed. Sarah Snook of Succession fame voices the main character, and Cody Smith-McPhee, who many will know from Power of the Dog, voices her character's brother. It's a labor of love. I think it took something like 8 years to make. It's all handcrafted animation. I highly recommend this film. Again, some of it is tough to watch, but it all sort of redeems itself at the end. Not that challenging content needs to be redeemed, but in the sense that we suffer, but it's all for a reason that makes us feel better at the end. And finally, and that film was directed by Adam Elliott, who is a well-known in Australia stop-motion animator. Cannot recommend the film enough. Then there's Conclave from German director Edward Berger, who a few years ago gave us All Quiet on the Western Front. That film really blew me away. And this one really surprised me, because who knew that a papal conclave to choose a new pope could be so thrilling? I mean, we can guess that it's filled with intrigue, but this movie really works as almost an action thriller. And it stars Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, and Isabella Rossellini, who was at Middleburg along with Edward Berger. And I know you and I both attended an hour-long symposium with her where she was being interviewed, and it was great to see her at the festival. I've long been an admirer. But this film is filled with, I think, very important messages for our time, especially the speech that Ralph Fiennes, who plays the person running the papal conclave, delivers early on, when he says that the greatest sin of all is certainty. This notion that we or the person claiming certainty has all the answers. And I cannot stress enough how much I believe that this is a film that everybody should see because of where the story goes and because of that message. So those are my three films. You know, I really do enjoy, as I said earlier, going to this festival. Are there particular aspects of the festival other than seeing movies that you enjoy, Cortland?
I love the little town. When you think of like small Americana Main Street, I think of Middleburg. It really is a jewel of a festival. The films that they get every year are so impressive. The people that they have on the board, the people that they get to come and talk to us is always so amazing. I mean, we've had Ryan Johnson before, Maggie Gyllenhaal. This year, you know, we had Oscar winner Chris Bowers come again. We've just had some really wonderful people, and it's just a really nice 4-day festival. It's not too long. It's the perfect amount of time, and you get a lot of wonderful, timely films. I really always walk away feeling like they are featuring a wide range of voices and opinions, which is something that I don't always feel walking away from a festival. And then also the people that they have involved, you know, running the show, and then also the press is always like a really wonderful group of people. So it is really like a diamond in the rough kind of festival. It's a pretty cool little place.
I couldn't agree more. One of the great things as a film critic, and I think you would agree, is because it's a smaller festival, we as critics get an opportunity to really get these interviews and to attend these colloquia with stars that at bigger festivals we might not get to be that close to. So, you know, I got to meet Zoe Saldana, who was starring in the film Emilia Perez, a film I liked, but I didn't put it in my top three. And I got to meet the composers, one of whom is French pop star Camille. And so this was all very exciting for me, as it is every year. And also, you know, the last show, episode 1 of CineManiax, was about Toronto. This is a festival that often brings a lot of films that played at Toronto and other important festivals. And so I get to sort of play catch up for the films that I've missed. And those who attend, who aren't film critics, get to see films that will no doubt be part of the awards conversation. And they also get to see these amazing stars, including Isabella Rossellini. So there are a lot of reasons to recommend this festival. It was founded by Sheila Johnson, one of the co-founders of Black Entertainment Television. It's a well-apportioned festival, has a lot of means to bring people to Middleburg, and it's in a beautiful part of Virginia. So I can't recommend it enough. So I want to thank you for being on the show and for sharing your thoughts about Middleburg, Cortland. It was really great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Next up, I'd like to share a clip from 2 of the interviews I conducted around Middleburg. One on location at the festival with Better Man director Michael Gracey, and another I did after the fest virtually with Black Box Diaries director Shiori Itō. Let's start with Better Man and an excerpt from my review. Born in 1974, British pop star Robbie Williams first came to fame in the 1990s boy band Take That. Now 50, the man can perhaps look back on his journey with some perspective, analyzing the highs and the lows, the good and the bad. Or at least that's the kind of movie director and co-writer Michael Gracey delivers in Better Man, a warts and all compendium of key points in the singer's life, in which Williams is portrayed as a chimpanzee while everyone else is human. Why? Because he's always thought of himself as something of a performing monkey. So you decide you're going to have Robbie be portrayed as a chimpanzee. You have a background in visual effects. How much of those amazing dance sequences, like what's the combination like of the compositing of digital effects, for example, the Piccadilly Circus rock DJ number? I really enjoyed that number. And how much of that was choreographed with live action, and how much of that are you just assembling in post-production? What was the process of creating a number like that?
So that is literally going down to, Regent Street and just blocking it out in the middle of the night, with people yelling at you, is this for TikTok? And we would just go there with a handful of dancers and just work out with Ashley Wallen, the choreographer, and Jenny Griffin, the assistant choreographer, and we would just go down the street trying to block it out. And I always think, to me, it's about sketching. You know, you can't conceive these things in one hit. So you sketch it out, you dance down the street, you work out what are the actions that they might be doing, whether it's, you know, pogo sticks or dancing on top of gumballs. You sort of start working out where these moments could occur as you come down the street. And narratively, what's going on is they've just signed their record deal. They are nobodies. So they come out on the street and everyone's ignoring them. They're just a bunch of rowdy lads, which is not uncommon on Regent Street. And they make their way all the way down, and by the end, the whole world knows about them. You know, people are chasing them down the street, grabbing at their clothes. So over the course of the song, you're basically watching Take That's rise to fame. But you're watching it inside Rob's head, which of course has him at the centre, because Gary Barlow's the lead singer of Take That, not Robbie. And Rock DJ didn't even exist at that time. So it's all in Rob's head, sort of how he sees, you know, the signing of that record deal playing out. And so you'd sketch it out, then we took it into 3D and we did an animated version of it, which helped us work out numbers, because obviously you could say, oh, how many people will we need to, at the end closing shot, see a sea of people down Regent Street? And the answer is 500. So we were like, okay, we're gonna need 500 people for that moment. Where you know, how many buses and taxis will we need to stop and start in terms of interacting moments with Rob? And so, yeah, it's all very much planned out in 3D after those sketches. Then we go back into the studio and we start choreographing to the moments and the timings that exist in the previs. And then once you've got it all on lock, you then get a huge studio space and you tape out Regent Street, because you obviously can't rehearse on the street, but you need to rehearse not just with the cast, but you've got to rehearse with the camera crew, because it's all so highly choreographed. And so that's kind of what we did. We taped out, the shoot was over 4 nights, so each section of Regent Street we'd tape out in the studio space, every bus stop, every curb, every shop front, every entrance, every exit, and we would run it over the course of a week before we then went onto the street and started filming. The only problem was we got to the end of that week of rehearsal with all the crew, you know, all the cast, the 500 dancers, the double-decker bus, the taxis, everything. And I was told that the night before the Queen died and we wouldn't be filming. So we got shut down because there's 10 days of mourning after the death of the Queen.
Oh boy.
We then had to wait for the funeral and the coronation, and there's no insurance for the death of the Queen. So we lost all of the money for that musical number.
Oh my God.
That we'd already outlaid.
Yeah.
We bought out those shops, we paid for the street, we paid for the dancers, the crew, the gear, everything. So it was an unbelievably expensive moment. And, you know, of course you have producers who go, we'll just cut the number. And as a filmmaker, you're like, no, you don't understand how important this is. And they're like, we understand how important this is. We also understand how expensive it is. And we're not doing that. Like, we don't have the money. And it's an independent film, so it's not like you just have a studio who writes the check. So we then had to, not only did we have to go out and raise that money, but because it took us so long to get back onto Regent Street, it delayed our entire post-production process because it's such an enormous number. So yeah, it actually delayed the delivery of the film. It's one of those numbers that when I watch now, I am so grateful that we all fought for it, but it was such a fight.
Well, I'm grateful too, because it's really one of the kind of sort of the moment of great energy in the film. I mean, you have many of them, but I really like that. Yeah,
it what propels you into the story.
Absolutely.
You know?
And now let's hear some of my interview with Shiori Itō with an excerpt from my review of her film, Black Box Diaries. In 2017, young journalist Shiori Itō effectively launched the Japanese Me Too movement with the publication of her book, Black Box, which recounts her 2015 rape by Noriyuko Yamaguchi, an older, more established figure in the profession. Beyond the ordeal of the assault, Itō also had to confront the bureaucratic and societal hurdles she faced to press charges against a man who was close friends with and biographer of then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. In her documentary Black Box Diaries, Itō explores her harrowing journey to both seek justice and break down long-standing barriers to true gender equality in Japan. My first question is this: at what point did you decide that these secret tapes and video diaries you had been making, partly as a form of self-protection, could form the basis of a documentary?
I like straight on question. Thank you so much. I had an idea, but I never really formed the idea that I would really make my own documentary film. But after 2 years trying to find out what happened, what was going on, and investigate on my case and recording, the case went weird path. The arrest warrant disappeared, and the case was dropped suddenly. So I decided to go public, to reopen a case, to ask to reopen a case, and ask other journalists to join and investigate. But it didn't really happen. So I realized this is something I can do by myself.
I'm sorry that the reason for your documentary had to be rooted in such personal trauma. Now, you include in your film a lot of cutaways of the Tokyo cityscape. We quite often see the shots of the city behind us. What were you going for as a filmmaker with this recurring visual of the cityscape?
So especially the cityscape was always my view and metaphor and mirror of the society of Japan and how I felt in it, often alone and dealing with my own investigation case. So these footages are the only new latest footage that I went back to places through reading back my own diaries. I start remembering where I was when I was writing, or what I was thinking, what I was looking at, or when I had these phone calls, where was I? Because some calls are just audio and we didn't have visual. So it was for me to have my own camera and start shooting the point of view from that time. So that's why I put it. I don't know if we were able to put it visually, but sometimes all these tall buildings were so suffocating for me. Remembering also the view from the investigation room, from the police station. So these places are very, for me, visually important to show in a film.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are times in the film when you're speaking to the camera in Japanese, and there are times when you're speaking to the camera in English. Why sometimes one language and sometimes another?
It was just because my friends were filming what was going on around me. They've been helping me to document. So the person who was filming in the beginning, she is originally from Sweden, living in London that time, who actually helped me to escape from Japan right after my press conference. And so, yeah, I just have to communicate her in English. So that's the only reason. But then there were some, like a video diary that I did, and I look back and I was speaking in English. It's one of the reasons I recently realized is what, growing up in Japan as a Japanese woman, we have always thought that we have to speak polite to older people, to men, and we have to speak with the way women speak. So in that way, even right after I woke up, during the assault, I only could tell the man, please stop. And I have to, change my mind and say, fuck off. But because I didn't have the word to stop the violence, and I didn't have the word to describe also my emotions. So especially when these diaries, I realized I've been writing a lot in English because I guess I didn't know how to describe, how to say it in Japanese.
I had a great time at Middleburg as always, and I hope you enjoyed the interviews as much as I did. I'm grateful to both Michael Gracey and Shiori Itō for the conversations. You can read the full versions of the interviews at Film Festival today. If you're curious about any of the films we discussed on today's show, be sure to look for them in theaters or via your streamers. You can check out my film reviews at Film Festival today in Hammer to Nail by visiting my Instagram at Chris Reed Film. For the CineManiax podcast, I'm Chris Reed. Thanks for joining me, and see you at the movies.